89 pounds. Her pulse was fading. Then the king of pop knocked on her door. It started innocently. A poster, a cassette, a concert ticket. That's all it took. By 18, Michael Jackson wasn't her favorite artist. He was her pulse. She knew which year a photo was taken by the curl of his hair. She could predict his interview answers before he finished speaking. She rewound his performances until the cassette player started eating the tape. That grinding, clicking sound became her lullaby. Her friends stopped calling. Her bedroom door stayed closed for days. Music leaked through the cracks like smoke. Her parents told themselves it was a phase. Teenagers obsess. They grow out of it. They were wrong. She started writing to him. Not fan mail, confessions, page after page of things she couldn't tell anyone else. How empty the world felt when his music stopped. How she imagined conversations they'd never have. How certain she was that if he could just read one letter, he'd understand. She bought stamps, addressed envelopes in careful handwriting, sealed them with tape because licking felt too permanent. Then she stacked them in a shoebox under her bed. She never mailed a single one. How could she? He was Michael Jackson. The girl kept writing anyway. 2 years, 147 letters, words he'd never read. The letters stopped being enough. Food turned to ash in her mouth. Her mother watched the weight drop. 10 pounds, then 20, then 30. Her jeans hung off her hips. Shadows carved hollows under her eyes. She promised she'd try. She couldn't. She stopped going to school, stopped showering, stopped opening the curtains. She'd lie in bed with Thriller spinning on the turntable, staring at the ceiling. The shoebox moved to her nightstand, close enough to touch, too far to send. Her body started shutting down. One morning, her mother found her collapsed on the bathroom floor. The paramedics came. The hospital doctor used words like severe malnutrition and clinical depression. He recommended psychiatric evaluation. Her mother refused to leave her there. She brought her daughter home and tucked her into bed like a child. 89 pounds, pulse barely registering, skin the color of old paper. That night, the mother sat at the kitchen table with a pen that kept running out of ink. She had to try. But when the door knocked 3 weeks later, nobody remembered how to breathe. She wrote to Michael Jackson, not to a record label, not to a management company. She found an address in a magazine, probably wrong, probably outdated, and wrote directly to him. She told him everything. About the concerts, about the cassette tapes played until they snapped, about the shoebox with 2 years of unsent letters, about the girl upstairs who weighed 89 pounds and couldn't remember the last time she'd smiled. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for fame. She asked for 5 minutes. One conversation. Maybe if her daughter could see him, hear his voice in the same room, she could find a way to let go. She signed it with no return address and no hope. 3 weeks of silence. Her daughter's weight dropped to 76 pounds. The doctor gave her days, not weeks. The mother started making phone calls to hospice centers, her hands shaking as she dialed. Then the doorbell rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon, overcast, quiet. The mother had been folding laundry in the living room, moving on autopilot, trying not to think about funeral arrangements. She walked to the door and opened it without checking the peephole. He stood on the porch in a black fedora and sunglasses, hands in the pockets of a red leather jacket. A bodyguard waited by a dark car at the curb, silent and watchful. But Michael had come to the door alone. No cameras, no announcement, just him. She couldn't speak. Her hands went numb. He pulled off the sunglasses. His eyes were soft, tired. He held up a folded piece of paper, her letter. She stepped aside. He walked past her into the living room. The father appeared from the kitchen holding a dish towel, froze mid-step, stared. Michael nodded at him. A quiet acknowledgement between two men who understood what was happening. The mother's hands were shaking. She led him upstairs. Each step creaked under their weight. She stopped at the bedroom door and knocked softly. No answer. She opened it anyway. Michael paused at the threshold. He'd been in thousands of rooms. But this one felt different. The girl was lying in bed, facing the wall, too weak to turn over. The room was silent except for the turntable's needle scratching the end groove. Click, hiss, click, hiss, over and over. The air was thick, stale, like no one had breathed there in days. Curtains drawn. The shoebox sat on the nightstand, lid slightly open. The mother whispered that someone was here to see her. The girl didn't respond. The mother said it again, louder. The girl asked who it was in a voice so faint it barely registered as sound. The mother didn't answer. She stepped aside. Michael Jackson walked through the door. The girl turned her head, slowly. Her eyes focused on him, and for 3 full seconds, nothing happened. She just stared. Her brain couldn't reconcile the man standing in her bedroom with the one who lived on magazine covers and stages thousands of miles away. She thought she was hallucinating. That obsession had finally shattered her mind completely. He crossed the room and sat down in the chair beside her bed. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her. Not with pity, not with the distant politeness celebrities use with fans, with recognition, like he'd been where she was. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded letter. Then he asked her a question that split her world in half. He asked if she really thought dying for him would make him happy. The girl stared at him. Tears started sliding down her face. She couldn't answer. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice quiet. He told her loving his music was a gift, that he was grateful. But if she died because of it, that gift would turn into a weight he'd carry forever. He told her he didn't want that. He told her she mattered more than any song he'd ever written. Then he pulled out a small photograph, worn at the edges. It showed a young boy surrounded by screaming fans, cameras flashing, hands reaching from every direction. The boy's face was frozen somewhere between a smile and terror. That was him, age 11, already famous, already trapped. He'd received thousands of letters over the years, but this one reminded him of his own childhood. Trapped, obsessed over, losing himself in what others wanted him to be. He understood what it felt like to love something so much you forgot how to be yourself. He'd spent his entire childhood performing for people who loved an image, not a person. But he'd learned something. The people who truly loved you didn't want you to disappear for them. They wanted you to exist, to breathe. He stayed for 4 hours. The parents sat downstairs listening to the low hum of conversation through the ceiling. They couldn't make out words, just the rhythm of 2 people talking. At one point, they heard something that stopped their hearts. Her laugh. Small, broken, but real. When Michael finally came downstairs, the sun had set. He thanked them for letting him visit. The mother tried to speak, but her throat closed. Then he pulled out a small notebook. 7 words that would speak louder than 2 years of silence. He tore out a page from the kind of notebook he carried everywhere to write down lyrics during the dangerous era. He wrote something on it. He folded it carefully and handed it to the mother, telling her to give it to her daughter when she was ready. Then he walked out the front door, nodded to his bodyguard, and disappeared into the night. The girl got out of bed the next morning. Her mother heard footsteps on the stairs, slow, unsteady, but moving, and rushed into the hallway. Her daughter stood there in an oversized t-shirt, skeletal but standing. She asked if there was anything to eat. The mother cried so hard she collapsed on the floor. Recovery wasn't linear. Some days the weight of everything crashed back down, but on those days she'd look at the note Michael had left. 7 words in his handwriting. Your life is the gift. Live it. She taped it to her mirror. Color started returning to her face. Her friends started calling. She answered. She enrolled in community college that fall. Psychology. She wanted to understand what had happened to her. She wanted to help people who felt the way she had. She took down the posters one by one, not all of them. She kept one, a simple black and white photo of Michael smiling, not performing, just smiling. It reminded her that he was human, just like her. 2 years later, she was sitting in the college library when someone asked if she was finished with the book she was holding. A quiet man with kind eyes stood there. His name was Daniel. He was studying to be a teacher. They started dating. She told him about her past when she was ready, about the obsession, about Michael, about how close she'd come to disappearing completely. He listened without judgment. He told her he was glad she'd stayed. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not consumption, not destruction, just presence. She married Daniel in her parents' backyard. As she said her vows, she thought about Michael, about what he'd told her in that bedroom, about how love isn't supposed to erase you. It's supposed to remind you that you exist. She still listened to his music, but it didn't hurt anymore. His voice had become something else, not an obsession, just a reminder of who she'd been and who she'd become. He wasn't the love of her life. He was the person who taught her that love doesn't mean losing yourself. The note stayed on her mirror for years, but life had one more lesson coming. Years passed. She became a therapist specializing in obsessive behaviors. She had 2 children. She taught them to love music without letting it consume them. Then June 2009 came. The breaking news scrolled across the screen. Michael Jackson, cardiac arrest, pronounced dead. She sat down slowly. Her husband took her hand. She didn't cry right away. She just stared, remembering his face across from her in that dim bedroom, the way he'd leaned forward, the way he'd asked if dying for him would make him happy. That night, she went to her childhood bedroom and sat on the bed where she'd once been dying. The shoebox was still there. She pulled it out and opened the lid. 147 letters. She didn't read them. The girl who'd written those letters didn't exist anymore. But she kept the box, because that girl was part of her story. Years later, her daughter came home from high school crying. She'd fallen in love with a boy who didn't know she existed. She'd stopped eating lunch. The woman sat her daughter down and told her a story about a girl who loved someone so much it almost killed her, about a knock on the door that changed everything. Her daughter asked what Michael had said in those 4 hours. The woman smiled. Some things stay private, but she could tell her this. He'd taught her that loving something doesn't mean disappearing into it, that the people worth loving want you to exist. Her daughter cried. Then she ate dinner. Then she called her friends. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a beginning. The shoebox is still under the bed. The note is still on the mirror. The story lives in the spaces between what's said and what's remembered. Michael Jackson saved her life not by being her hero, but by reminding her she was human. And maybe that's the greatest gift anyone can give. If someone showed up at your door when you'd lost all hope, would you let them in? Like this video if a story ever changed your life. Subscribe if you believe in impossible kindness, and tell us in the comments, who would you thank for saving you when you didn't know you needed saving?